Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have a couple things that I want to cover with you guys about some new information that has come out about the FBI. Before I get into that new story that has broke, I want to cover uh, my own story here about the FBI. So just to let everybody know, and I'm sure most of you guys are already aware of this, I am currently working on a documentary. This is a documentary called K and K, an FBI terror plot. As you can see, this is the give, send, go for the documentary. We are trying to raise $150,000 to complete the project. That's basically a budget for everything. We want this to be as professional as possible for everyone. And I've already spent thousands of dollars of my own money funding this, traveling to places. I need to hire an editor. I need to license music. I need to hire a colorist. And then there's taxes involved in this as well. So that I think is a very small fundraising goal for a full-length documentary that is very low budget actually. So we're currently in the process of trying to meet that goal. I know it seems like a lot, but we would like to have this documentary completed and delivered by the end of this year. So the sooner that we can raise the funding, meet our fundraising goal, the sooner we can complete the project and get it done correctly. If you go to K and K, just the letter K and AND, K, film.com, that will take you right here to our fundraiser page where you could contribute to the documentary. If you like, you can read about what the story is, what the goal is. You can see our updates that we have made. We have stuff listed here. There's update number 1, update number 2. We have the official trailer there that you can watch if you haven't seen it already. Update number 1 has links to all of our social media accounts, official accounts for the documentary, so you can follow. Make sure that you're following the official Twitter account. Make sure you are subscribed to the official YouTube channel, which is at K&K Film Official on YouTube. When you subscribe, make sure you hit the little notification bell so you can get an update anytime we publish something on any of the official social media platforms for the documentary, so you can get updates on the status of it. But we're doing pretty good so far. I think that our short-term goal right now is to hit at least $10,000 to $15,000 so we can start using that money to travel and do various things that we need to do. So that's short-range goal. Long-range goal, of course, is reaching the full fundraising goal to get the documentary completed. I think it's super, super important. You can watch the trailer here. If you guys could share this stuff on social media, that is a big, big help to me. Independent filmmakers already have it hard. Like, I don't have a distributor for my film, so I have to do everything myself. All of the social media, all of the filming, everything I have to do myself, and with a small team of people, mostly volunteers that are helping me, graphics, marketing, and advertising for the documentary. There is a lot that goes into it. So with that being said, we'll move on now. I'm sorry, I just have to do it. A girl's got to do what a girl has to do. And I have made a commitment to these men and their families to tell that story, and that's what I'm going to do. But let's move on to the latest with the FBI, which, again, only serves to bolster what people like myself and others have already been saying about the FBI. So this is an article from the Intercept. Now, I think it's important to point out prior to going into the article that the Intercept is owned by a billionaire named Omar Midyar, I think is his name. Midyar is his last name, I believe, though. But he is like I guess you could say, sort of like a far left activist. And they seemingly only cover this stuff when it suits their like racial grievance narrative. They didn't really touch on what the FBI did in the Whitmer case, which I find very, very interesting because there's so many parallels and similarities. And by the way, these two are connected. So what this article talks about by Trevor Aaronson, who is the guy who wrote the 2011 book called The Terror Factory. Fantastic book that looks at the FBI's confidential human source program that were targeting Muslims in the wake of 9/11 and trying to basically find vulnerable people on the margins of society, and then trying to befriend and radicalize them and set them up and frame them for a fake DT. And, you know, he believes those people were racially profiled or whatever, that there's some kind of racial component. But I think that what it actually is that the FBI just needs to manufacture threats that they can then save us from, you know, which will justify their ever increasing budgets. So, but it's so similar, and there is a connection. What you're going to hear about in this article was an FBI informant paid money, and he is a criminal, right? He has a criminal past, so he's like a felon, being paid by the FBI to infiltrate the Black Lives Matter movement, the Denver scene there for BLM, and try to steer them into becoming more militant and radicalizing them, and then pushing for offensive action, which is exactly what happened in the Whitmer case. And it's interesting how the FBI plays both sides of this. So they're utilizing outrage about things, right? So for when they were infiltrating militia groups in the summer of 2020, they were using BLM unrest, as that was one of the things that these guys were upset about. They saw cities being burned, and they saw stores getting looted, people being assaulted, and police not showing up for that. And so these guys were angry about it. They were concerned. And then it's on the other side of that, here's the FBI infiltrating BLM while they're burning down cities and looting and rioting, and encouraging them to do that. Also using paid informants. So they're weaponizing both sides of the extremes with this. And I think that is so important for people to understand. The FBI is political, though, and let's not pretend that they aren't. There is a target there that is a bigger target, and it isn't leftists, unfortunately. But this does not surprise me. I myself have said many times that I believe both Antifa and BLM were also the subject of FBI infiltration and subversion in the same way that right-wing groups are as well. They play both sides. They encourage extremism and division on both sides so they can play them against each other and come in and swoop in and say, hey, look, you need us to save the day. And so that was what the guys in the Whitmer thing were concerned about. And so you can see how these are connected. But let's go ahead and get into the article. The FBI paid a violent felon to infiltrate Denver's racial justice movement. Now, another interesting thing to note here is just how they refer to BLM protests and riots as a racial justice movement. But they certainly don't say that about people who were protesting the lockdowns in Michigan, while the FBI had infiltrated that as well. They don't call them like, oh, these freedom fighters, you know? So just remember that. But anyways, as racial justice, mostly peaceful protests broke out nationwide in the summer of 2020, a man driving a silver hearse became a regular at the demonstrations. He was a paunchy 5'7" with a ruddy complexion and wore military fatigues with patches on the sleeves. By activist standards, he was an old-timer, pushing 50 as he swaggered through crowds of teens and 20-something protesters, a cigar clamped in his lips. Quote, I don't know much about him, but he drove a hearse, says Zebodios Zeb Hall, a black activist in Denver. Inside this hearse was a lot of guns, AR-15s, and all other kinds of stuff. The driver of the hearse filled with guns was Michael Adam Windecker II. He went by the nickname of Mickey and boasted of having been a soldier for the French Foreign Legion and the Peshmerga, the Kurdish fighting force, known most recently for battling the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. He claimed to have traveled to those battlefields and trained anti-fascist activists there in weapons, hand-to-hand combat, and explosives. Quote, he was just this bad A dude talking about how he worked in foreign military and how he was for the BLM movement, Hall remembered. Yeah. Denver was a hot spot during the Summer of Love, with protesters enraged not just by George Floyd's killing in Minneapolis, but also by the senseless death of Elijah McClain, who was forcibly subdued by police in 2019 in Aurora, a Denver suburb, and injected with a lethal dose of ketamine. Trey Quinn, a muscular black activist with a beard and large frame glasses, led some of the Denver protests. One night after Quinn had addressed a group of demonstrators, several young activists introduced him to Windecker. Hey, this guy's really dope. He's legit. He knows his stuff. Quinn remembered being told by fresh-faced activists, you should let him sit in and he could probably help you out. Windecker was really pushy, Quinn told me, trying to put himself at the forefront. Well, this was the same thing with Steve Robeson, who was one of the, and Dan Chappell, two of the lead informants in the Whitmer case. Dan Chappell was an Iraq war veteran who bragged about his skills and how he had been part of the elite team that rescued American sniper and hero Chris Kyle. And he was also very pushy, rose to become second in command of the Wolverine Watchman group. Steve Robeson was the head of a national 3%ers group that was completely made up by the FBI out of whole cloth. It didn't exist in reality. But then he was inducting people into state chapters for a fake militia group. The FBI was administering Facebook pages for fake militia groups. They also had their informants in different state chapters. So when you find state chapter 3%er or Patriot 3%er groups on Facebook, those were in fact being run by the federal government. And I suspect you'd see the same thing with Antifa and BLM, the same type of government-sponsored activity. Or you could also say entrapment and honeypots. Bryce Shelby, another activist, remembered seeing Windecker walking around the protests. He had a GoPro camera strapped to his chest, which Shelby initially thought was suspicious. He de-escalated any type of suspicion because he would start flashing his prison badge. So yeah, you know what I mean? Okay, he's not a Fed. Really. And that's, in the Whitmer case, when there were questions of Fed infiltration because everybody knew something suspicious was going on. They just didn't know what. The FBI Special Agent Jason Chambers told Dan Chappell, just blame somebody like Trent and to take the focus and suspicion off yourself. So frame somebody else is what the FBI said. Shelby and many other activists in Denver were wrong about the man behind the wheel of the silver hearse. Windecker was a Fed. The FBI paid him tens of thousands of dollars in cash to infiltrate and spy on racial justice groups during the summer of 2020. For the last year, I've been investigating Windecker and his work for the FBI. I tell that story in detail in a new 10-episode podcast, Alphabet Boys. Which is, interesting, and I encourage everybody to listen to that. As part of this investigation, I reviewed more than 300 pages of FBI reports and hours of undercover recordings, as well as publicly available videos by Denver demonstrators and Windecker himself. So how did he get access to this? I mean, to some of this information, which presumably is still under seal. I find that interesting. Trevor Aaronson obviously has sources, and it seems to me that the FBI put this story out themselves, and I'll tell you why it's suspicious to me. The Whitmer case involved at least 12 undercover informants, 12 FBI informants, 2 undercover agents, possibly 3. And so this is just one guy that they used to infiltrate this big scene in Denver for BLM. So they want to make it look like, hey, we're not just doing this to militia groups or right-wing groups. We're doing this to everybody equally. No, that is not the case. One informant is not the same as 12. So just keep that in mind. But there could be something else going on here as well. I will include the link to this article. He was paid $20,000, more than $20,000 for his work during the summer of 2020. So they try to say that the FBI goes after Antifa, but they don't, and they're not. House Republicans have launched a committee chaired by Jim Jordan that seems exclusively focused on the FBI's alleged targeting of right-wing groups. I love how they do stuff like this. Yeah, it's not alleged, it's well documented, Trevor, and you know that. So it just seems like right before the Republicans are going to investigate the FBI's obviously politically motivated manufacturing of fake DT cases. Oh, look, you know, they do it to leftists too, and to minorities, which is silly, and it's clearly not true. We all saw the Washington, D.C. FBI field office come outside and take a knee. I mean, we all have seen it, okay? But I want you to notice how this is getting mainstream coverage in a way that the Whitmer case was not. Where's the Daily Beast article about how FBI informants derailed the Midwest militia movement in 2020? You're not going to get that. No, what you'll get is articles about how those guys were dangerous white supremacists or whatever, which isn't true at all. So I just want to point that out. Anytime you see stuff like this in the mainstream media and leftist media, you'll always see the bias with which they cover these things. Now, here was a very interesting thread that has a different take than mine, which my belief is that the FBI put the story out themselves basically because they want to take remove the stigma of being a political secret police, which is what they are. So they throw out like a red herring like this, you know, a one-off to say, oh, look, we're doing it to the left too, when they're not. So Bryce Green says, obvious Fed shows up to BLM protests in Denver, acting like an obvious Fed, fought in Syria, has a hearse full of weapons and tried to get protesters to arm themselves, and activists fell for it and got arrested. Should be an interesting listen. And Reed says, while interesting, this podcast is a bit odd. The host is a fellow at Arizona State University Center on the Future of War and New America think tank. There's an emerging trend of podcasts on parapolitical topics funded by think tanks and Democrat Party PACs like American PSYOP, which is funded by the Midas Touch PAC. This is where we get to the truth of what's really going on here. This, along with criticism by some Republicans and conservative media figures of agencies like the FBI, feels like part of a pincer maneuver to further privatize intelligence agencies. Pierre Omidyar, that's the guy, of the Intercept, owner of the Intercept, where the host also works, would probably make bank on that. I should add that this isn't to impinge on anyone's work, but I'm beginning to think podcasts are an ideal propaganda medium for micro-targeting for a few reasons, mainly because they're literally hypnosis. Most people half listen while doing some other tasks, but also because they're difficult to hate listen and therefore critique. Hate watching can be social, hate reading can be skimming, but hate listening is more difficult and taxing in my opinion because it's so individual and at a set pace. So the only people who really end up listening are fans. Check out New America's funding. Pivotal Ventures is Melinda Gates. It's all Gates, Ford, and Rockefeller foundations, the Waltons, and the State Department. By the way, Reid Hoffman is a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. So just saying. ASU's president, Michael M. Crow, is also chairman of In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital arm. Whereas Alphabet Boys focuses on domestic spy agencies like the FBI, American PSYOP, funded by the Midas Touch Democratic PAC, emphasizes the narrative of foreign PSYOPs and infiltration of domestic activist movements. Their other shows include one co-hosted by Trump's ex-lawyer, Michael Cohen. Oh, come on. Director of Policy Planning at the State Department under Hillary Clinton is the CEO of New America, Marianne Slaughter. For the record, American PSYOP says, close but no, we would have taken financing from them, but we only connected with them for distribution, which they luckily agreed to handle, never dealt with their PAC. It doesn't matter. It's still problematic, in my opinion. Now, moving on to an article from Reason. It's almost always the feds, how the FBI fabricates schemes to entrap would-be radicals. The FBI's long history of using informants and manufactured plots to persecute extremists or just, you know, regular people. This goes into the Whitmer case, though. Then we had this FBI to retract Catholic infiltration memo, conduct internal review. The FBI is retracting a leaked document that advised the Bureau to infiltrate groups of traditional Roman Catholics who the assessment claimed were at risk of committing acts of extreme V, the Daily Caller has learned. The FBI tells the caller that the document put forward by the Richmond, Virginia field office, quote, does not meet the exacting standards of the FBI, and the Bureau will be conducting an internal review. Upon learning of the document, FBI HQ quickly began taking action to remove the document from FBI systems and conduct a review of the basis for the document. So this is what it really is about. Here, once again, the FBI is exposed for going after a conservative segment of the population, just like parents who were concerned about CRT and Drag Queen Story Hour that were labeled as potential DTs by Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray's FBI. You know, it's like, oh, no, you know, actually, you know, we sometimes look at BLM and Antifa and sometimes infiltrate them too. So there's another article here from LifeSite News, and I will include all of the links to everything in the video description. Jim Jordan says dozens of FBI whistleblowers have come forward over weaponization against conservatives. This is the first House Government Weaponization Oversight Committee where Jim Jordan discussed this.
In my time in Congress, I have never seen anything like this. Dozens and dozens of whistleblowers, FBI agents coming to us, talking about what's going on, the political nature at the Justice Department. Not Jim Jordan saying this, not Republicans, not conservatives, good, brave FBI agents who are willing to come forward and give us the truth.
Yes, FBI whistleblowers. So, moving on, here is a longer talk by Jim Jordan about this.
November 18th, 2021, an FBI whistleblower discloses to Republicans on the House Judiciary that the FBI created a threat tag for parents voicing their concerns at school board meetings. April 26, 2022, another FBI whistleblower discloses that the FBI employees are being run out of the Bureau for attending conservative political events. May 11th, 2022, another FBI whistleblower discloses that dozens of parents with the threat tag designation to their name are investigated by the FBI. This also happens to be the same whistleblower who said the FBI leadership, not the rank and file members, the FBI leadership is rotted at its core. His clearance has been revoked and he's been suspended. June 7th, 2022, another FBI whistleblower is retaliated against after giving feedback on an anonymous survey. July 27th, 2022, another FBI whistleblower discloses that agents are pressured to reclassify cases as domestic violent extremism cases to hit self-created performance metrics. September 14th, 2022, an FBI whistleblower discloses that the FBI views the Betsy Ross flag as a terrorist symbol. September 19th, 2022, another FBI whistleblower discloses that the Washington field office is deliberately manipulating January 6 case files to make it appear that domestic violence extremism is on the rise. He's been suspended. November 4th, 2022, another FBI whistleblower discloses the FBI accepts private user information from Facebook without the user's consent, and information is from only the conservative side of the political spectrum. This is only a sampling. In my time in Congress, I have never seen anything like this. Dozens and dozens of whistleblowers, FBI agents coming to us, talking about what's going on, the political nature at the Justice Department. Not Jim Jordan saying this, not Republicans, not conservatives, good, brave FBI agents who are willing to come forward and give us the truth. And this is just the FBI.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so breaking exclusive FBI HQ disavows the Roman traditional Catholic profiling document targeting a, quote, small minority of overall Roman Catholics. And Patrick Casey has a very good point here. He says, our institutions are undeniably politicized and weaponized against us, but their legitimacy depends on the propagation of the myth that they are apolitical in nature. This apology only happened because the document leaked and people became angry. Other than that, they wouldn't care. And so I'm interested to hear what you guys think. If you are a longtime subscriber of my channel and you followed my reporting and my work, you know that I've been exposing the FBI for a long time now. You all know I'm working on the documentary in the Whitmer case, and that I've been focused on that case specifically because I think it is the perfect example in way to highlight FBI corruption. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this story that came out from the Intercept and the connections there of saying, oh no, you know, trust us, the FBI does this to the left too. Like, what do you guys think of that? Obviously, I believe that did happen. I just think it's far less common than their targeting of people on the right, or just, you know, regular Christians, as we saw with the Roman Catholic document. Anyways, I have a lot of stuff I want to cover. I might be putting out some videos on my second channel, so watch out for that. If you're not subscribed to that, I have it linked on the homepage of my main channel. It's the Radix Report. I do some financial news over there, mostly focused on stuff like that. But I have a lot of stuff I want to cover lately, so I should be putting out some more videos, if not today, tomorrow. So yeah, I'll see you guys soon.